Hey guys, this video is to do with Jupiter meeting with Chiron on the, the date is the 12th of March 2023 at 5:36 a.m. That's UK time. The thing would be that if you are in California, then it's 8 hours behind that time. So it would be on the 11th. And if you're in New York, then it's 36 minutes past midnight. And then clearly, if you're in places like Australia, it's ahead of time. But I think it would be on the same day, the 12th, time difference. So some things coming up. I'm showing you this chart today, but I want to explain to you what is going on with some big changes that are coming up. So on March the 7th, Saturn is going into Pisces, which is a big move. That will be for 2.5 years. Then we've got on the 12th, 11th, 12th, we've got Chiron Jupiter. So you see here, Jupiter, Chiron. Jupiter conjuncts Chiron. Jupiter takes 12 years around the chart, and Chiron takes between 49 to 51 years around the chart. Then we will have on the March 23rd, we've got Pluto is moving into Aquarius. And then we've got a solar eclipse on April 20th, and then a lunar eclipse on May 5th. And then later in the year, in July, 23rd of July, we've got Pluto, which would be in an exact square to the North Node and the South Node. The thing that will be happening with that, though, although Pluto will be moving into Aquarius, it will go retrograde back into the sign of Capricorn for a period of time. And then it will go direct again back into Aquarius. So you can see here that this Jupiter and Chiron are in the sign of Aries, and the exact aspects of that, which are quite interesting, worth knowing. And I'll tell you a bit about this conjunction as well. So I looked at dates back to 1900, and Jupiter Chiron was 1901, 1915, 1928. And this would be because that Jupiter is going around the chart every 12 years, roughly. So then 1928, that was in Taurus. So I'm just looking to see, because this is in Aries. And I think looking back, I'm just looking through my list here. It was Taurus, it was Pisces, it was 1976. March the 4th, 1976. It was an absolute conjunction was Jupiter Chiron. So, 25 degrees, 1976. And what is interesting, what we're going through now with electricity prices and our wounding of self, sense of self, means that, it's sort of got quite an interesting ring to it. So whether you were around in 1976, if you were born in the 60s or early 70s, then you would have been very young. So as it goes on after this conjunction here, which is on the March 12th, the UK, it's actually got 6:53 a.m. here. I don't know if I've done, it is the correct time, but daylight saving hours would come into this as well. So depending on where we are. After the 2023, the next meeting of Jupiter Chiron will be 2036, July the 22nd, 2036. So it's not, it's a big thing. Chiron entered Aries on April 17th, 2018, and it will remain there until 14th of April 14th, 2027. So that's approximately around 9 years. With this Chiron in Aries, it's where we can feel like we've been quite traumatized by the fact that we're finding it hard to be successful. And I think right now, what's very interesting is that it's very difficult to be proactive and assertive, because with what happened in 2020, we've all been told, we basically can't express ourselves fully. So we're very stuck. I mean, people who use social media having to hold themselves back a bit, or go onto different platforms, or a bit more sensitive to being themselves as well. So it can feel like suppression as well of being our true selves. So in a way, in order to move forward, we got that Mars. So the ruler is Mars of this Chiron and Jupiter here, and because it's in Aries. And what we really need is to be proactive and get some of that energy going, and to basically move forward. And Jupiter, when it hits this conjunction, we're basically looking at expansion of something, so for better or for worse. So there is a brilliant book which is called, by Melanie Reinhardt, which is on Chiron. We'll put the link below this video. But what we've got is the urge to connect with something greater. So Jupiter here. In fact, what I'm going to do is go over to solar fire. So see, because then we can move the chart. So if I go, get my pointer, spotlight. So see here, what you're looking at is the Jupiter Chiron. And then we've got, because there's some other stuff going on with this, so I'll explain these aspects as well. We've got Jupiter at 1426, and we've got Chiron at 1426. And before I go over to solar fire, I'll show you actually, we've got an inconjunct. The moon is going to be inconjunct that day. And then the other thing, we've got Uranus is opposite to the moon that day, 15 degrees, 15 degrees. And we've also got some trines going on, but that's to Lilith over here, true Lilith. And then we've got the sun is trining to the moon, it looks like there. And then we've got some sextiles, semi-sextiles, sextiles going on here. And we've got a square Jupiter to, let's see, Jupiter to, I better actually look at that. We've got Pluto, which is also in an inconjunct to Lilith. And I do like working with Lilith in my own chart. So solar fire is over here. I'm just going to share a new screen. So this is the emanated chart. I'll get my pointer again. Here. Okay, so you can see here that at that point we would have had Saturn has moved into on the 7th. It will then be at 0 degrees of Pisces. On that day, we've also got Mercury conjunct the Sun, conjunct Neptune. Then we've got Jupiter conjunct Chiron. We've also got Venus, which is in Aries. The North Node is in Taurus. That will be moving into Aries also in a few months' time. Then we've also got Uranus here. Mars has been forever in the sign of Gemini. It'll be nice when it moves out, which will be the end of March. And then we've got True Lilith here. I think that's True Lilith. And that's Asteroid Lilith. And then we got the South Node in Scorpio, which will be moving into Libra when the North Node moves in. They move together. And the moon here is in the sign of Scorpio on that day. So in Capricorn, Pluto Capricorn. If I go forward by days, that's the 12th of March there. I'm going to come back to the Chiron Jupiter, by the way. I'm just showing you. There you go. That's the 000. That's the 23rd. And it will be later in the day. So if I go by hours, there you go. And it's in. And the last time that was there was in around 17 in fact, the 4th of July, 1776, Pluto was 27 degrees of Capricorn. So let's say 1778, 79. I haven't got it in front of me, which is really interesting that we're going into this whole brand new phase. Now, if I come back to today, or the 12th, actually, the 12th of March, 2023. There you go. And I'm just going to take Jupiter back there. I love solar fire, so it's brilliant to see the movement. So there you go. There's that conjunction. So it is the urge to connect with something greater. Chiron can be seen to balance the inflationary it's basically that the Jupiter wants to be over the top. So Chiron balances that out. Jupiter can go way out there. It is to do with our ego structures as well, and the wounding of our wounds that we live with. And we're all trying to figure out how we get rid of our wounding. And it seems, particularly in the public, we have Gabor Mate, we have all of these people who are talking about, the wound, and it comes to a point, and then more wounds are being created daily. I don't think we can ever get away from them. When we look at wars, as an example, fresh wounds are being created. As people are healing, new wounds get created elsewhere. It's the world that we seem to live in. But personally, as we do our work and we look at our shadow and we get to know ourselves, I don't even think that's any easier. Sometimes the saying that ignorance is bliss, but it depends what we want for ourselves, and each soul is on their own journey. But definitely the beauty of like the work of Carl Gustav Jung, where he spoke about, looking at the shadow, the anima and the animus. And he spent a lifetime working on that stuff. And the benefit of it is that in our consciousness that we take responsibility for ourselves. So I don't think it's a happy place particularly, but it means that we do become more conscious of where we project. We take more ownership of ourselves. And this doesn't mean we're without problems as well. It just means that we're dealing with things on a very different level. As we awaken to our true selves, then we stop seeking outside ourselves, and glamour is not so glamorous anymore because we see through it, and fantasy as well. We hit another way of being. Of course, there's nothing wrong with fantasizing about what we want for our future or goals and dreams, but I think we become more grounded. And Jung spent a lot of time in nature. He built a stone house as well, I think, on his property. And he had no electricity or gas or anything like that. Mind you, in those days, 1900s, I don't know if they had, but he had no electric going on there. So he kept his life very simple, and he used to do his art and write there. So we can have big hopes, and it can be to do with grandiosity. In the book by Melanie Reinhardt, she did explain that Jupiter rides Chiron like a hobby horse. So here we don't want to avoid human life. We want to, but pain may, the pain that we see, it may make us want to dissociate. Or the other thing is as well is that we might want to start fighting for global causes and think that we can do it single-handedly, which we can't. We can't end everything on our own. One of the things I'm doing to keep things going is that I use cash when I'm shopping. So if you look at Catherine Austin Fitts on financial rebellion, it's really important because humanity doesn't need to be more wounded. And there are some decisions that are being made that could be pushed upon us that could cause more wounding to the individual. And part of that Chiron Aries, when I, consider it's where we lack the appropriate dose of healthy aggression that is needed in a competitive society in order to survive competition with those who are too harsh and ruthless. This is one of the definitions of that. It's where we can compensate with exaggerated activity, but the results never correspond with the effort that we put in. So we have to look at how we're using this. Chiron was a healer, a teacher, was an immortal centaur, and he was injured. He was injured, which caused him great suffering. And also he was raised by Zeus. And I think that the mythology is really important to us. Jung also talked about that. The Chiron Aries as well, the Chiron Jupiter, we could look at the willingness to reflect deeply on our experiences, to balance the expansion of that. We want to balance it. We don't want to go too far above ourselves. We want to balance it inwardly, and also to not lose connection with the value of all life, because I think I see a lot of that as well. I see there's a loss of connection. Some might call it God. I'm not religious, call it what you may, but I think that it's really we've been so busy with trying to make ends meet, or maybe worried about the future, that for many people. So if we can take a middle way and, stick with what's true. Now, truth is a really interesting thing, because varying different sources will give us different types of truth. And also what we can even see in our own lives, that what we consider to be true at one time, we now know that it's not true. So we can watch that in ourselves and ask ourselves, is this true? And own up. If we don't know something to be 100% true, we can own up and say, well, actually, I don't know if that's the truth, but it feels, it can be an intuition that something, that a correct way of being or doing, like the money thing, as an example, and what people are saying about the CBDC and control. Jordan Peterson is also doing a lot of work around that. So the middle way is truth, with our money, with our work, with our relationships, and also to look at who and what are we supporting, because sometimes we can think that we're supporting something that's correct, like we did in 2020. A lot of, pharmaceuticals, where we were told that something would work. And, many of us had to make decisions at that point, and we've had a few rude awakenings of late. So the truth, consider what that means, and without the dogma, what is the truth, or what is the truth in the moment for myself, as an example. So we could have a lot of feelings of being betrayed with this Jupiter, and particularly if people start saying things, this could get interesting with that Jupiter there. Like if people are preaching things to be one way and they're another, we could be in for some fanaticism and feel a sense of betrayal of our own ideas. Because there's a lot of people, what I've noticed when I'm out and about, there's a lot of people, for instance, that don't know. If I say, oh, have you heard of the World Economic Forum? People say, oh, no, who are they? So it's really interesting that not everybody knows everything. I don't know everything. None of us do. But with what's going on in the world, it's like there's some clear guidelines, or, that people are just, or not guidelines, but clear things that have been going on, money exchanging hands, etc. So this can be optimistic and it can be confidence as well. It could be overconfidence. It's also where we could regain an inner spiritual connection, which is the nice thing about that. So because Jupiter is to do with spirituality and beliefs and the sense of the bigger picture and the possible future as well. And the inner source of wisdom, like our own inner source of wisdom, like our inner God, and remembering who we are, whatever that means to you, because we can be so wounded in childhood and through life, and we lose our sparkle, and we need to bring that back in. So it's not magical thinking. It's like if we look in the world at the beautiful animals that exist, the stars, the sun, the moon, the sea, the beauty that exists around us, that's real. We see it with our eyes. So we want to gain a sense of self with this Chiron, and where we've been wounded, and soothe ourselves in healthy ways. We don't want to neglect at this time. If you're neglecting your appearance, for instance, go and make an effort with yourself. All of us, do begin to make the most of yourself, because we can feel that we're unworthy and that we're not worthy. And simple things, the foods we put into our body, treating ourselves like we're important. And it's about, self-love and self-respect and our own unique personal power, because we have that, and we're being all thrown into the same sort of pen together, if that's the right word, like if we're and if we can, or the same field, we're all thrown in together. And then there's part of society that, are running the show. It's very odd, isn't it? But this has been from time millennia. And we, if I've said that correct, and we, where do we go to be free? And I don't mean about, running away. It's, from anything and living in the sticks. But where do we get our sense of freedom back? They're talking about the news, the World Economic Forum, 15-minute cities. This is going around. It's very difficult, to even consider that, my freedom to travel would be taken away. We're here to enjoy this earth that we live on. So we need to be proactive. We need to, not get away from that squashed sense of squashing ourselves, and we need to be assertive, healthy, like healthy movement forward. And exaggerated activity gives no results. So we need rest as well, because the body does need that. So Jupiter, let's look at going to Jupiter now. Jupiter in Aries, it's a lot of enthusiasm. It can be like the trust of a child, the exuberance of the enthusiastic child, like they want to, climb on a chair, or they want to show you them, who they are, and sing and be themselves, and they want to be paid attention to. And, we have that within us. They can be very eager. But at the same time, this Jupiter, there can be extravagance, and we need to be aware that, that whilst Jupiter in Aries can become like leaders, very good leaders, we can become leaders, and be independent with that Jupiter there. In fact, that Jupiter, let's have a look how long Jupiter is in the Aries for. I'm going to go weeks ahead. So I'll just move it through. Jupiter will move into Taurus, 29 degrees. That's the 11th of May. So I reckon that will go direct, and then it will go back into, it will retrograde back into Aries again. Let's go forward more. Let's see, retrograde, it's about 5 months. There you go. It's retrograde in September, maybe before. I want to see what degree it goes back to. Okay. So it won't move back into, we know that now, it will not move back into Aries by the looks of it, from what I did. And weeks back, there you go, they're together again. April, March, 19th of March, 12th of March, okay. So we need to keep in mind that there's much ahead of us, and that experiences and possibilities that are ahead of us. I'll give you some of the Jupiter keywords. What I would like to do, actually, I want to show you how that's working out in my chart so that you can look at your own chart as well. So new, share. I'm going to go back here. And then I'm going to go here, make sure I'm sharing the right screen. Okay, so this is my chart, but this chart I'm showing you. It's today, state. It's 27th February. On that day, it's going to be in my 5th house. So what's quite lovely for me, I've got, during this period, the North Node is moving into my 5th house. I wish my 5th house was bigger, to be honest with you, with all of these beautiful planets moving in. Jupiter and the North Node. So what will happen is, for me, in this area, it will be there for, I think, a year. So many months anyway. It's a good 12 months plus for me. But when you can see, because I'm part Taurus as well, actually, so a bit longer. So it's moving into my 5th house, and it will be there for quite some time for me. The Chiron, the Jupiter, it's in my 5th house. So this is to do with publishing, it's to do with creativity, it's to do with fun and joy, and it's to do with being creative and being myself. And the 5th house is Leo. So this is really important for me at this point in my life, because I am deciding how I go forward with my creativity, and I'm building a website as well, and I'm writing. So there's a lot for me going on there. So the beautiful thing about, if we go back now to new share to the Emanator page, so spotlight. Okay, so we're talking about this Jupiter Chiron. So Jupiter, we have creative, where we can feel creative. There can be optimism, it's philosophy, it's religion, it's self-improvement, it's study as well. So that, that's interesting. We're study as well. It's success, it's travel, it's trust, it's higher learning, the higher mind, it's hope, but it can be inflation, but overinflation, expansiveness, excess. It can be conceit, it can be aspirations and abundance, but it can also be, our wealth and wisdom, but it can also be wastage. So this is where we've got to watch that Jupiter inwardly. And the creative side is, optimism. It's an expansive outlook, and it's a desire for improvement. And when it's on its not so good side, it can be, hypocritical. It can be overlook details, overconfidence, and extreme as well. So all of those things are worth thinking about in our chart, wherever it is. And then Chiron, which is really, I do like working with Chiron, because I've had my own Chiron return, and that happens between the age of 49 and 51. And it's very powerful to understand. It's the wounded healer, it's our woundedness, it's the wound that maybe we come in with, or that happens to us that we just can't shake, but it becomes a gift, which is very difficult to, definitely early on in my understanding of what I'd experienced in my life. I didn't, I wasn't too happy about that. Like people say it's a gift, but I get it now. It's no happy thing, but I get the gifts that I have as a person as a result of, and what it's done for my consciousness as well, and awareness. It's where we can come to acceptance. They do say it's the bridge between worlds. it's where we can find creative solutions. It's a paradox as well. It's our suffering. It's uniting opposites, and it's unseen forces. Because the interesting thing is, we're born and we die. That's the opposite, isn't it? Birth and death. It's the opposite. And the pain that we have, and everybody has pain, and we can't say my pain is worse than your pain. It doesn't work that way. And people, there's a lot of loneliness at the moment in the world as well. So we can be a healing presence to the world and caring. And as we heal ourselves, then we can mentor other people. And the harder side of it is where we might be a scapegoat, or the suffering may be very ongoing. And, if we don't heal and we're self-medicating, as an example, then that can cause further suffering. And other things, even geographical wars and things where people have got no way out of these situations. So it's quite fascinating. So, as you know, the Chiron will be there till 2027 in the sign of Aries, and then it will move into Taurus. And then I think let's just go ahead and see what else I can see here. So that I would say that this just looks, the inconjunct. I'll look back to, I've got to mention to you these charts, new share. So this is astro.com that I was showing my chart from. I want to honor the people that I'm using this. This is what I use when I look at charts for myself and other people. And I use SolarFire, and I use Astro-Seek. They're all brilliant sites. So we can see that, you're looking for the house it's in for you. And there will be some hard aspects as that moves through for me as well, but we can manage those things. We're on a journey. If I look now at Astro-Seek, so horoscopes.astro-seek.com. If you put Astro-Seek, you'll come up with this. It's brilliant. It's got the free horoscopes, astro tools. You can see all of that going on there. I've got an account, you can see. So, which you can have, but you don't need one to look at charts there, but it's worth having one because then you can save charts as well. That's why it's worth having one, and other reasons as well. So the 0 degrees Pisces, I'm going to make a video about that next week. I have Saturn Pisces at 27 degrees conjunct my Chiron, hardcore in my 4th house. And it's been a lot of work to understand that and what I've garnered and gained from that as well. We also have, but I do have some nice aspects to my Saturn. So it's not, there are no bad planets, by the way. I remember reading that the other day in Liz Green in her book Saturn. She's got a book on Saturn, and she mentions, or Robert Hand mentions, the fact that there's no good or bad planets. We're just living life. It's like the weather. We don't know what the weather's going to be like in next week or tomorrow unless we look. And then we can make assumptions that we think, oh, it's going to rain tomorrow. And we can make an assumption about what that means to us. And it's maybe similar to looking at planets. We make assumptions about what that means, and we can scare ourselves, or we can be overly joyful. But the point would be to know ourselves and to gain compassion for ourselves and other people as well. And also learning skills like when to say no, having boundaries, many, many things, we can learn from astrology, understanding what these symbols mean, because a chart is basically a bunch of symbols. I remember Simon Vorster saying this to me of Raising Vibrations, a brilliant astrologer who coached me for quite a period of time. He said to me that, it's a bunch of symbols and mathematics, and, it's like it's happening now. This is already happening. It's not like something that's going to happen. It's happening as we speak. You know, right now the moon is in the sign of Gemini. Right now, probably squaring my Pluto again. Every month I get 17 degrees. Every time the moon hits 17 degrees of Gemini, which is my natal moon, it squares my Pluto. So I feel it every month. I'm on a cycle. The moon cycles are really interesting to follow. So you can see that, you know, this is the depths here, that Scorpio moon there. But there's some nice aspects going on. I don't know if I read them all. Before I go, let's see, run through this chart. So we got the sun trine the moon. So the sun trine the moon, which is nice. Sun conjunct Mercury, which is where we can stand up and speak for ourselves. It's in the sign of Pisces. And we have the sun square Mars on that day. So the sun is square to Mars down here. Yeah, sun square Mars. And we have the sun sextile to Uranus. Sun sextile to Uranus. The moon is trine Mercury. The moon, you can see there, is trine to Mercury. Exact, actually, just. The moon is in conjunct Jupiter. Moon in conjunct Jupiter. But the moon moves quite quickly. But, you know, our emotions are involved in this. Whatever's going on there, it's involved. You know, what is Aries? Aries is warlike. It's warrior energy. It's impulsiveness, and it's a wound, and Jupiter expansion. So it'd be interesting to see how this plays out. The moon is opposing Uranus, as you can see, opposition, and the moon is trine Neptune, which is quite beautiful. Mercury sextile Uranus, Venus sextile Mars. I'm reading through them all. Venus square Pluto. Okay, that's a tough cookie. Venus here is their square going into a square. The node is opposing the moon as well, emotions, the north node. It's on the south. I mean, it's not that close, but it's not nearly 10 degrees. So I would say the moon is off the node, really. And then the node square to Lilith, that's very interesting to me. The node square Lilith here. And then Chiron in conjunct the moon, and Chiron conjunct Jupiter. So I'm going to leave it there, and we'll see how this plays out for all of us. Okay, catch you later. Thanks for watching.